Let's go to work.
Sir? Can I get a space like that?
Tonight, a Chronicle celebration. Join Mike Barnacle, Ted Reinstein, Peter Mahegan, and me, Mary Richardson, for 20 years of special moments and special memories. From our first days on the job,
It was so long ago, I had hair.
to our favorite places in the world.
Sampling La Dolce Vita in Venice.
The unforgettable characters.
Oh, here comes the dog. He's looking for coffee. Look at that white dog in that truck.
The extraordinary stories.
I think it's amazing to think of what my mom went through.
And your top-voted visits along New England's main streets and back roads. 2 decades of the best Chronicle has to offer. Join the party as Chronicle turns 20 next. Good evening from the Union Oyster House. We're here to celebrate a notable event in the life of this television program, Chronicle's 20th birthday.
20 years is indeed a milestone, so permit us to boast as we point out that Chronicle belongs to a select group. Few television programs have been on the air since 1982, and let us also point out who's kept us on the air for all of those 20 years. You, our audience.
So, while the birthday is ours, the gift goes to you. Tonight we present a Chronicle scrapbook, 20 years in the making.
We'll relive memorable moments, catch up with old friends, revisit exotic ports of call. And as promised, we'll return to your favorite miles along New England's main streets and back roads.
First, though, as the newest member of the team, let me point out that our celebration tonight takes place in the oldest restaurant in America. At 175, the Union Oyster House has a few years on us. The folks here at the Union Oyster House, though, have graciously welcomed us tonight, opening their doors and their bar. Oyster bar, that is. More on that later.
That's right, Teddy. And speaking of old, believe it or not, I'm the senior member of this group. I predate both you, Mary and Peter. So I got the assignment to take a look back at where we've been. Chronicle's had its share of growing pains, but we've also had a lot of fun along the way. "20 years ago, this door was still here. This office was just being started. This is where Chronicle began. And I'll tell you, 20 years ago, the competition at 7:30 was Barney Miller, Evening Magazine, and Entertainment Tonight. Chronicle finished a distant 4th in the ratings. Now, I mean, we're beating out Bart Simpson.
I'm Bart Simpson. Who the hell are you?
Who are you? Can you believe it? 20 years, can you believe it?
Yep, when I came over in '84, I said, this thing is going to go 30 years.
And actually, it was such a rough and difficult beginning that I didn't think I'd be sitting here after 20 weeks, let alone 20 years. We were a bit full of ourselves, and I think we led the audience and community to believe that we were going to be providing them with the second coming of 60 Minutes. But we provided the exact opposite. You know, we provided a magazine show of 3 or 4 different topics, and all of which were somewhat superficial.
The critics had a field day with lines like, if Mike Wallace had seen the first 10 Chronicle programs, he'd sue for defamation of character because Chronicle is a dog and pony show compared with 60 Minutes.
The first year was a little bit confused because the program really didn't have an identity yet. They were all across the board, and the individual pieces were good, but didn't somehow fit together.
Finally, in that first summer, which was 6 or 7 months into the program, we managed to stumble across the concept of having a single subject or a single theme. And the first night we did it, it just felt right.
I showed up opening day, 1982. It was so long ago, I had hair. Over the next couple of years, I said goodbye to the original anchors, Chet Curtis, Donna Downs, Gene Blake, and contributor Arnie Reisman, and hello to, you see this guy over here, Peter Mahegan?
Mike Barnacle, I recognize you. Hi, Mike.
Peter was down the hallway working news,
Right.
and he didn't want to come down and do Chronicle because, you know, he was in the business for security. Okay? And 20 years later, we're still here, Peter, still fooling them.
You know, I thought this was the craziest place. You know, I'd never been out of a newsroom before, and I thought these Chronicle people were crazy. I didn't want to work with them. And here we are 20 years later. We are fooling them, aren't we?
And then along comes Mary.
The year was 1984.
My very first day in Chronicle, Indira Gandhi was assassinated. I learned more about Sikhs and Indian government in that day than I ever thought possible, and I loved it. And at the end of the day, on a day like that, you feel great.
20 years ago, Ted Reinstein was in the cast of Sheer Madness. In 1995, he brought his act to Chronicle.
Hey, what can I say? The first show I worked on was a Main Streets in Montgomery, Vermont. There was a guy who had a restaurant and painted all in purple, including the bathrooms. I thought, if this is a sign of things to come.
How many experiences have we been on together?
Oh man, donuts and pizza and... What about the Elvis wedding? A classic.
An Elvis wedding we've been to. We've been to a Twins festival.
In Cleveland!
Where I think for 2 days we passed off as identical twins separated at birth.
Yeah.
One of the hardest parts about getting this show on the air was giving it a name. Meetings generated long lists of contenders that led to sleepless nights.
Crime Access.
Online.
Tuning in.
Close Up.
5 to you.
I suppose my greatest contribution, and perhaps only contribution at that time, was the name. This device indicates how old I am and how old Chronicle is. This we used in our original opening graphic. It had a window blind effect, and you could see that you manipulated it with your hand and then shot individual sequences, closing the windows until it spelled out Chronicle. It's almost as old as Peter's car.
And today it's all digital.
20 years certainly does deserve birthday cards.
Ours arrived in video form from other 20-year-olds around town. Here's a sample.
It was 20 years ago today.
Hi, I'm Tom Arcero, doorman here at the Millennium Bostonian Hotel for 20 years. 1982 was definitely a great year. This hotel checked in its first guest, and Chronicle checked in with their first show on Channel 5. Happy birthday, Chronicle, for 20 great years. Taxi!